Hi, my name is Jen, and I wanted to share something with other people in the world. I am a mother who gave up her parental rights, and it became apparent to me this winter as I was struggling and doing a lot of crying and missing my daughter that there are a lot of other women just like me around the world in the same position, and that there is no one to speak up for them. There is no one to extend a hand or offer friendship or compassion in this time. Now, mothers leave their children for several reasons. Um, some mothers don't really care to be a mother at this point in the child's life. Some mothers are forced to part with their children against their wishes. Some mothers choose to leave for peace, as I did. Then I thought of other mothers, mothers that have to go to prison, mothers who are in the military and have to go overseas. There are a lot of different ways that mothers have to leave their children and through death. There are a lot of reasons why mothers leave their children. And through my research this winter, I found that there seems to be a really common negative thread attached to it, mainly one of insanity. A mother must be the most horrible person in the world to do this. The children suffer abandonment, etc., etc. So I thought of that, and I thought of all these other mothers, mainly one in Australia that put a little excerpt in on an article and said, you know, there must be other mothers around the world in our position. Is there any help? And I looked and I thought, no, if anything, there's nothing but ostracism. Now, I was in a very abusive relationship for 11 and a half years. Um, Before I was married, I was vivacious, I was happy, um, I was confident. There were things that I did. I backpacked in Europe, I worked at a Fortune 100 company just outside Boston, I graduated college, I did all these things. And yet, when I ended up accepting marriage with my ex-husband, I suddenly found myself in a world that I wasn't familiar with. I didn't have a lot of experience with boyfriends. My parents had divorced, his parents had divorced, and so I set into the thought process of, regardless of what happens, I'm going to make this work. You know, I'm going to have that house. I'm going to have those children. I'm going to stay at home and raise them. I'm going to correct everything that had happened in my life that I deemed to be wrong, and I will succeed. This wasn't such a wise choice, but I do value everything I've learned through the relationship. I learned what I will and will not tolerate. I learned a lot about myself. But in my marriage of 11 and a half years, I slowly slipped into a state of depression, constant anxiety, fear of what he would say, fear of what he would think. And slowly I shut down. I shut down my emotions. For 8 years, I didn't cry after my daughter was born. I didn't express anger, really, because these things were not allowed. These things were meant to, I'd get the silent treatment, or I'd be punished in some other way. And when a person is in that environment and they lack the confidence they need suddenly, they're looking at one person as a guide. They are looking at this one person, their spouse, as someone who's looking out for their best interests. You tend to withdraw. And when you're told constantly that you're crazy and you're wrong, and what you feel is wrong, and what you think is wrong, and that what you say is something that you didn't say, you start to question your own reality. And if that's the only person really in your life left that you can turn to, you really are in a point of accepting what they say as reality. And that's kind of where I ended up. And when my daughter was about 6, which is 3 years ago, I slowly started to wake up. And I find it interesting that my waking up and realizing the horrendous dysfunction of my relationship coincides with waking up spiritually as well. I watched a video earlier today about 2 police officers who resign their position in London because of a similar sort of problem where they were so entwined in the the mechanism of the force and must control people, that they woke up and realized what they were doing wasn't helping the public. It was actually helping this organization hurt the public. And what I realized in my relationship was that not only was it hurting me, but it was hurting my daughter as well. Well, things got intolerable for me, and we split. And through the separation, my sanity was attacked. I was called mentally unstable. I was forced to go to a psychiatrist. They made me take drugs. The drugs didn't work because all it did was, the more manipulation that occurred and the more things that came out against my own thoughts and my feelings, the more anxious I became. So with the intent being to make me act crazy, I actually felt crazy. And I sat there and I thought about it one night. And I thought very long. It was midnight. And no matter how much negotiation was tried, no matter what was brought forth, a compromise could not be met. The other side was bent on a trial, witnesses, this whole quest to prove that I wasn't sane. So I sat there one night and I thought about it, and I pulled myself out of my situation and I looked at it from a larger perspective. And what I saw was that I was in no position to be able to think straight, function at that point. I was so fraught with fear and anxiety, which was the goal, to get me full of fear and anxiety, that I was not only did I not feel comfortable, but I didn't feel safe in that environment. And the new state laws now, the way they are, promote both parents interacting with the child, which I am in full agreement with. I fully support that. However, what it doesn't do is address issues of domestic abuse. And there are lots of ways that people can domestically abuse each other. It doesn't just involve a fist and a head. It doesn't just involve rape. Psychologically and emotionally abusing somebody for an extended period of time has very negative effects. And the thing is, it not only affects the mother, it affects the child, because even if the child is not technically abused, the child sees the mother and the child understands the pain, and it also thinks that it's responsible for this. So it's a twofold thing, and this is something that the legal system does not recognize. I was told, well, you feel this way and this happened to you, but it didn't affect your daughter. Well, that's just simply not true. A child and its mother are so close. A child knows and feels the mother's emotions. So this was something very important to me. The other factor was my ex-husband and my interaction. No matter how many interactions we had, there was always a twist to the story about the actual conversation. There was always a twist as to, I would say something and it would be twisted around another way. And I realized that I couldn't figure out how to overcome this. I still can't at this point. I know someday I eventually will, and that's my goal, to go back and deal with this. But at that point, I had a decision to make, and I thought about it very hard, and I realized, one, I wasn't going to win the battle. Two, I couldn't figure out how to deal with this person who I'd lived with for over a decade. I mean, if I understood their psyche and I understood how to protect myself from that sort of interaction in a healthy and cooperative way, then I would have done that. So I realized that they weren't going to let me take my daughter because they weren't going to allow her to be away from the father, which is fine. But I got to a point where I had to save myself because there was going to be nothing left of me. And my question was, what good am I to my daughter if I am not operating at peak performance level? If I'm at a 40%, just my physical presence, I feel, would be more destructive to her than to not have her there at all.